It's great to welcome to the program today Jerry Mitchell, whose stories have helped put four Klansmen and a serial killer behind bars. That's an introduction aching for more detail, Jerry. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
It's great to talk to you, David.
So tell us a little bit about your investigative work, and you wrote the book Race Against Time, which tells the story of Ku Klux Klan murders that went unpunished during the civil rights movement. Talk a little bit about how you got into this space and how this all developed.
Yeah, well, it kind of a couple things happened in pretty close proximity. The first being I happened to see the movie Mississippi Burning, which is a fictional film about the killings of the three young men, the civil rights workers killed by the Klan in Mississippi, James Chaney, Andy Goodman, and Mickey Schwerner. And they were killed on the first day of summer in 1964, which was also part of Freedom Summer, which was very important to the civil rights movement in terms of college students coming down, and given one of those. But basically nobody, the thing that shocked me in watching the film, and I happened to be sitting by an FBI agent, by the way, who investigated the case, which is another wild thing in retrospect. But I was shocked to discover more than 20 Klansmen were involved in that killing, and nobody had ever been prosecuted for murder. That was the part I just couldn't wrap my head around, David.
Was
You
that
know,
common? I mean, going back, however
yes,
far back you want to go, how common was it that the
common,
perpetrators in lynchings, et cetera, were just never prosecuted?
extremely common, but I was woefully ignorant, and I just didn't know. This was all news to me at the time in 1989, and so I grew up in my little white bread world and East Texas, and I didn't know any of this. And so here I am plopped in Mississippi on this new job. And anyway, it's all news to me. And I'm just a lowly reporter and just, stumbled across this. And so I started reporting about that. And about the same time, I found out about this. I don't know if you're like me, but if someone tells me I can't have something, I want it like a million times worse, right? So there was something in Mississippi called the Mississippi Sovereignty Commission, which was the state segregation spy agency, and there were like 132,000 pages of records that the Mississippi legislature sealed for 50 years. So when I found that out, my first thought was, well, there's something in there, they wouldn't be sealing for 50 years otherwise. So I developed sources who began to leak me the files, and what they showed was at the same time the state of Mississippi was prosecuting Byron D. Beckwith for murdering Medgar Evers. This other arm of the state sovereignty commission was secretly assisting the defense trying to get Beckwith acquitted, and nobody knew that. And so my story ran October 1st of '89, and then basically the case got reopened. That's kind of the short version of it.
And when it comes to, I mean, so there's a few cases that you've worked on, so-called cold cases that you
Yeah.
start researching and reporting on. At what point during these, what is the step that makes it so that it is officially reopened and being reinvestigated, that kind of opens the door once again?
Right. Well, in the case of the Medgar Evers case, it was this revelation that helped to kind of pry open that. By the end of it, kind of one thing led to another. Murley Evers asked for the case to be reopened. The newspaper, the Clarion Ledger, where I was working, editorialized for it. The city council voted for it. And then basically the DA's office by the end of the month said he was reopening the case. But it really didn't kind of begin to turn until months later when the discovery of that Beckwith had bragged to a Klansman about killing Medgar Evers. And so that kind of began to turn the tide. It was technically reopened, but didn't look like anything was going to happen. And that's really what did it.
So when you start investigating some of these cases, what type of investigative work are you doing? Are you saying, who can I talk to? Are you interviewing witnesses? Is it a lot of
Sure.
data and research work?
Yeah, well, like for example, I was able to get a copy of the transcript Murley Evers had shared at the widow of Medgar Evers. And so that was really helpful. I went and interviewed the police officers, for example, that gave Beckwith an alibi. and their story differed from what one of them differed from what he had told back in '64 in the trials.
Now, why
So,
would those officers even agree to talk to you?
well, I guess you'd have to ask them. I don't know.
Yeah.
I, I, I think someone wrote about me one time, this is years ago, where my hair all went pretty much white or lighter. It said, "Well, do I look like Opie?" So I mean, I think I came across as kind of a harmless guy, in their eyes, and certainly Southern. So anyway, they welcomed me.
And at different points, as these cases start to shift from being unlikely to ever,
Right.
having a resolution to, hey, this is being looked into, to, hey, there could be charges coming. Do you worry about your personal safety?
Well, my wife at the time certainly did. She was concerned I was going to be killed, and in retrospect, I understand a little better than I did at the time. I mean, she was here. I am going to interview the killer of Medgar Evers, and she was eight months pregnant with our son. So yeah, I didn't take it really into account. But speaking of Beckwith, I went and interviewed him, and so yeah, there were some frightening moments. When I interviewed Beckwith, I spent about 6 hours with him. Absolutely, this most racist person I ever spent time with, and it was 6 hours later. It's dark. He insists on walking me out to the car, and I'm like, really? That's okay. So he gets me out of the car. He says, if you write positive things about white Caucasian Christians, God will bless you. If you write negative things about white Caucasian Christians, God will punish you. If God does not punish you directly, several individuals will do it for him.
Right. I was going to say, if it was just going to be left to God, that's one thing. But he's making it clear that
No,
yeah.
Help God out, obviously.
So, I mean, I have so many different aspects of things that I want to ask about. But in your investigation, in some of these conversations, one of the interesting things that at least today is not often told about the history of the civil rights movement, the Mississippi burning case is an interesting example, is that there were a lot of Jewish folks who were working
Yes.
with the civil rights movement. And in fact, sometimes the victims, including in Mississippi burning, are presumed to be Black Americans, but
Yes.
are Jewish folks. Did you, in your work on these cases, also encounter that anti-Semitism was just completely wrapped up with the anti-Black racism?
Oh yeah. In fact, I'm kind of shorthanding these stories, but when I talked to Byron D. Beckwith, he was really more anti-Semitic than he was anti-Black. Anything that wasn't white, pretty much. But he was a part of what's called Christian identity, and Beckwith was not alone on that. The head of the Klan was also believed this, and Christian identity is essentially just a horrible racist, religion. They believe that Adam and Eve were white people. They believe that all the other non-white races are mud people, quote unquote. They're like animals and have souls, and then they believe. I mean, this is where it gets really rank and horribly racist toward the Jews. They believe that Jews are the literal offspring of Satan.
Right.
I mean,
Well, what's interesting about hearing you say mud people, I think it was more than 10 years ago, I interviewed this guy named Glenn Miller, who since has been arrested, of course, for killing people he believed were Jewish, but in fact were not. And I asked him, from your perspective, is the real threat the Black folks or the Jewish folks? And it was sort of like hard for him to even say, like there was just a lot of, it's not even clear he had it straight, but they were all mud people. That's the exact word that he used.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that was their a common term of Christian identity, and that's what they believe. It's they believe that white people are the true Israelites. It just gets very strange, and I mean, following the logic of it, there's not really logic. But yes, you are correct. They believe in mud people and very anti-Semitic. I mean. There's a really good book there's several good books we could point to, but Blood in the Face, James Ridgway wrote, which talks about, in fact, Beckwith brought that term up to me. That's why they believe it's white people, because white people can blush. Uh, and then there's a book Jack Nelson wrote some years ago called Terror in the Night, which is about basically how the Klan in Mississippi were originally attacking African Americans as well as white sympathizers. But then they really shifted their focus to attacking the Jews. They began to bomb synagogues, bomb Jewish leaders' homes, and things like that.
Were any of the Klansmen blindsided by charges? In other words, while you were working on stuff, did people start to catch wind of what was going on?
Yeah, they started getting increasingly nervous at times, and or stopped talking to me at certain points. Because my idea was to get in there early. I wanted to talk to the killers. I wanted to hear what they had to say and keep them talking. And they're just at certain points. I know we had actually, because Beckwith stopped talking to me. But we had another reporter who went and actually was sitting there almost right when Beckwith, he got a call that basically he was going to get arrested. and he was like, they sent the reporter away, and Beckwith and his wife are fuming. And yeah, so it was fascinating, to hear all this as it unfolds.
I think that there will be people who listen to our conversation and they will maybe envision that the era you were investigating was a different era where things, people don't get away with murder in the same way now that they did then. But in fact, in some parts of the country, the murder resolution rate is actually quite low. And there's a lot of good research about this. There's, some more specific ideas about vehicular homicide being a pretty safe way to kill someone if you want to murder them. That's kind of a more niche topic. But generally speaking, it's not like murders are overwhelmingly being solved today, is it?
Yeah, I mean, they're continued. Well, let's be honest about a lot of homicides are. We're not talking about, smart, like carried out by people who, maybe they're angry at the time and there they are and the police catch them with blood on their hands.
Yes.
You know what I mean? What I'm saying is most homicides are relatively easy to solve. You know what I mean? But you're right about the murder resolution rate in terms of the ones that are more difficult to solve. You're right. The rate is not what you would like to see, because, in other words, like if you have any intelligence about it, it's almost easier to get away with murder, if that makes any sense.
We're going to go to a break on the broadcast show, but we're going to continue our conversation with Jerry Mitchell, which you can find in full over on our YouTube channel. So can you talk a little bit about, I mean, you mentioned at the beginning in explaining some of these cases that part of what was going on was that authorities were actually assisting the defense. In other words, there was what we would call a foul play from authorities. Yeah. Can you talk about how that played into your investigation in terms of whether law enforcement was stonewalling you?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what you saw in these cases. I mean, the Medgar Evers case is a great example. You had 3 different police officers who gave Byron D. Beckwith an alibi, like claimed that he couldn't have killed Medgar Evers. They basically lied, and let's just be honest, they lied. They claimed he was, hour or 2 away or 90 miles away in Greenwood, Mississippi. So, I mean, at the time, and they gave no explanation for why they would have remembered it. Remember, this is a small town. These were small town police officers, and they would have seen hundreds of people a day that they knew. And why would you remember this? Because Beckwith wasn't, the thing that people forget is Beckwith wasn't arrested for another 10 days. So it's not like they didn't connect him. They say he was doing something unusual. They didn't connect the time to anything. It was very obvious they were lying. And they were incredibly specific in the time. It's like 1:05. They claimed they saw him at 1:05. It's like, it couldn't even tell. I mean, it was something more memorable, which was when they heard on the radio that Medgar Evers was killed, they couldn't give a definite time for that. You know what I mean? So it's pretty obvious. And then in the Mississippi burning case, you had law enforcement who actually helped carry out the crime. And basically what happened is Cecil Price, who was the deputy, arrested the three civil rights workers. James Chaney, who happened to be African American, who's a native Mississippian. You had Mickey Schwerner and Andy Goodman, who both from New York, and both were involved in the civil rights movement. Mickey for longer, and Mickey was involved, and his wife Rita involved in a number of protests before this. And so anyway, they basically lock them up in jail on false charges and then release them into the hands of the waiting Klansmen, who then, of course, took them out and summarily executed them and buried the bodies about 15 feet down, and they weren't found for 44 days. So,
have there been, in the cases you've researched, have the participants, the enablers in positions of authority, been held accountable at all?
Sometimes, but not often. I mean, most of the time they got away with it. Like these three police officers in the Medgar Evers case, they weren't ever charged with perjury or, anything like that. One of them did testify in the trial, which took place in 1994, but it wasn't like he got prosecuted for perjury. So no, I would say for the most part, you didn't see law enforcement held responsible. The sheriff in the Mississippi burning case, he was actually, the only trial he had was a federal trial, and he was acquitted on federal charges because he was off, off in Meridian. His wife was having surgery or something like that. So he's supposedly away at the time, which of course, none of that would have happened without his permission. And he allegedly met the Klansmen after they got done and said, if any of you talk, I'll kill you, basically.
In terms of documents, so you were doing a lot of, or really, I think all of this, before the age of FOIA, Freedom of Information Act requests. And you talked a little bit about documents that were leaked to you or provided to you. But generally speaking, what was your process for finding documentary evidence?
Well, you just, as reporters, the way you work is you try to figure out what law enforcement records still exist or court records still exist. So obviously, go to the court, go to the clerk's office, go to the court file. Like in the transcript, the pieces ended up being all over the place. In the Medgar Evers case, for example, Murley Evers had a copy of the transcript that wasn't in a court file. You had the prosecutor in the case, which this part sounds like I'm making it up. The prosecutor in the case found the murder weapon in his father-in-law's closet, and the Jackson police were cleaning out a closet and found a box that contained the crime scene photographs of the killing of Medgar Evers, including the fingerprint of Byron D. Beckwith lifted from the murder weapon. So there are all these things. You're essentially, everyone's kind of casting out and trying to find stuff. I know I got, like I said, I went and interviewed Beckwith. I found lots of old newspaper articles. Back during these days, we used microfilm. And so you would go onto microfilm and look at old newspaper stories, for example, and see, okay, what got reported at the time? Who were some of the witnesses at the time? And then try and track those down. And that's how I found those police officers, was essentially, I will tell one story. This is obviously all pre-internet. So we used to have in the newsroom, we'd have stacks of phone books, because we were a statewide newspaper, so we covered the whole state at the Clarion Ledger. So anyway, I talked to the one police officer, and he didn't know where the other police officer was. Holly was this guy's name. Other guy, he didn't remember where he was. And Cresswell was the guy I was trying to find. Hollis Cresswell was his name. So anyway, I had the phone book and looked. He had a real unusual last name, Cresswell with one S. And so I looked in the phone book, and there were about a half dozen or less than that, I think. So I just picked the name that looked most promising and called, and just did my best Southern accent, and I was like, "Is Hollis there?" And they go, "No, you want my cousin." he lives over in Maven. Let me give you the number. It's a typical Southern thing.
A
They
different
want to be
era
helpful.
for
You
sure.
know.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's an incredible story. Jerry Mitchell wrote the book Race Against Time, where he tells the story of KKK murders that went unpunished during the civil rights movement until decades later prosecutions took place, in great part thanks to Jerry's investigative reporting. Jerry, I so appreciate your time today and really, really
Thanks.
appreciate your work as well.
Thanks very much for having me, Dave. Appreciate it.